This video is going to be about solving equations. And why would we even want to solve equations? If we remember that algebra in Arabic means algebra, I don't know how to pronounce that, which means putting the broken pieces back together again. Putting the broken pieces back together. And that can be incredibly useful if we have a long expression and we need to simplify it. Let's take an example. If we had 5x plus 3 equals to 18, how would we solve that equation? Well, as the name suggests, in algebra, all the pieces are broken. We have numbers on the left-hand side, the right-hand side. We have a letter which is connected to a number. We want to find what x is. Just x alone, not all this confusion of numbers and letters. Let's get rid of all the letters apart from just a single x and take away all the numbers that are next to that x. Should we start with dividing by 5 to get rid of the 5 or getting rid of the 3? Well, if we divide by 5, we're going to be left with decimals and fractions, and it'll get really quite complicated. So let's start by getting rid of the plus 3. In equations, you always have to do the opposite of a term to get rid of it, and you have to do it to both sides. To get rid of my plus 3, we'd have to do minus 3, and we'd have to do it to both sides. An equation just means both sides equal each other. So if you do something weird to one side, you have to do it to both sides, otherwise they would no longer equal each other. And notice also how I've written the minus 3 underneath the plus 3 and the 18. The numbers are with the numbers and the letters are on their own. They're two different categories. 5 apples, for example, plus 3 oranges. If we take away 3 oranges from both sides, the apples are not affected. Letters and numbers keep them quite separate. So if you write them in nice neat columns like so, what are we going to be left with? We're still going to have the 5x, which is not affected at all, and we're going to have equals to 18 take away 3, which is 15. If 5x equals 15, now we can get rid of that 5. 5 next to the x means 5 times by x. How do we get rid of times by 5? Well, the last step in an equation is almost always to divide. So yes, we're going to divide by 5 and get x equals. Just to make that clear, if I just write down divide by 5 and divide by 5. 15 divided by 5 is 3. So all the pieces have been put back together and we just have a simple letter, x, and a simple number, 3. So x equals 3. Let's try a harder equation. This time one where there's unknowns on both sides of the bracket. For example, if we had 6y take away 4 equals 3y add 5. Notice how we have unknowns on both sides, so it's more complicated. If you relied on in the previous example on guessing different numbers and seeing which one works, that becomes increasingly hard the more unknowns we have and the more expressions. So it might be best to learn this reverse way of doing things rather than just guessing numbers. Okay, what do I mean by reverse way of doing things? Well, we get rid of each term one by one until we've put all the broken pieces back together and we just have y equals a number. Here's my final tip. Focus on the smaller numbers first, and the smaller numbers and the smaller letters. They're much easier to get rid of. If you get rid of the smaller numbers, you shouldn't have that many negatives, and it's easy to make mistakes when we have minuses and negatives. So let's focus on the smaller numbers and keep things positive. What's a smaller number? Minus 4 or plus 5? It's minus 4. How do we get rid of minus 4? We do the opposite. Let me just write that in bold down here. Do the opposite. And let me highlight that because it's so crucial to understanding how to solve equations. We are going to do the opposite. Okay. Now, how would we do the opposite with minus 4? The opposite of minus 4 is plus 4. And remember, we have to do it to both sides. Do I write my plus 4 here? No, that's next to the 6y. That'll just confuse me. Let's write the plus 4 underneath the minus 4. So plus 4 to this side, and remember plus 4 to the other side as well. What would we have? The letters would be unaffected, so we'd still have 6y. Plus 4 minus 4 disappears, so 6y equals to 3y still, the letters are unaffected. 5 plus 4 is 9. Now, let's focus on the smaller letters. What's smaller, 3y or 6y? It's 3y. How do we get rid of 3y? It's not divide by 3, that would just get rid of the 3. Although that would actually be a good step at this stage, but let's do it slightly differently. Let's get rid of the whole thing, 3y. To do that, we'd do minus 3y to both sides. Again, notice how I'm putting the minus 3y underneath the letters. The 9 is not affected. The 9's a number. 6y take away 3y is 3y. So we have 3y equals 3y take away 3y disappears. So 3y equals 9. Finally, as I said before, the last stage is almost always to divide. So 3y equals 9. We divide by 3. So y equals 3. And we've solved the equation. We've got time for one last equation, and I'm going to make it even more tricky. To do this equation, we are going to, let's do it in yellow. Let's do it over here. Yeah, let's do it here. Okay, so we've got 5 into a plus 3 in brackets equals to 2 into 2a minus 6. Let's write that all in one line. How would we solve that long thing? First, to even get started, we need to expand the brackets. When it's inside brackets, that is just massively confusing. Let's times out the brackets. Remember, to times out brackets, you multiply everything outside by each term inside. 5 times a is 5a. 5 times 3 is 15. 2 times 2a is 4a. And 2 times minus 6 is minus 12. So here's our equation now. What's the smaller number? The smaller number is minus 12. So what we're going to do? We're going to do add 12 to get rid of it. And finally, just notice I'm writing the add 12 underneath the numbers, not underneath the letters. We have 5a plus 27 equals 4a. The letters are unaffected. What's the smaller letter this time? The smaller letter is 4a. Let's get rid of the 4a then by doing minus 4a. If we divide it by 4, we'd still be left with an a over there. But if we take away the whole thing, take away 4a, we're left with nothing. What have we got? 5a minus 4a is just a. The number is unaffected. And 4a take away 4a is 0. Yes, you are allowed to have a 0. Many students think, oh, I must have made a mistake. Or they just leave out the equals entirely and they just say, well, a equals 27. But we need to keep the equals where it was. And yes, you are allowed to write a 0. That's fine. We're basically done. Something plus 27 equals 0. Well, if you like to make it nice and clear, let's push that number. Let's gently nudge it just so it falls over to the other side and we have a nice, neat equation and all the pieces back together. To push that 27 to the other side, we just do minus 27 to both sides and we're left with a on its own equals minus 27. That's what a equals. and all the pieces are back together.